Hi guys, welcome to this week's instalment of The V Word with me, Victoria Henrietta. I think it's important to cover women across history as well as those modern icons. We've got lots of women who paved the way for us women nowadays to have a good life. And I thought today I would focus on a woman who was instrumental in developing the lives of the LGBTQ community. So the lady I'm focusing on today is Marsha P Johnson. Marsha P Johnson was an American gay liberation and rights activist and self-defined drag queen. I chose her for several reasons really, mostly because of her brave, outspoken and courageous voice and behaviour. She was inspirational to many people, and obviously the big hair and the headdresses just set her out from everyone else, and I thought that she'd be a great woman to focus on. Johnson was a leader during the standoff that culminated in the infamous Stonewall riot. They were violent demonstrations by members of the LGBT community against the prejudiced police. Now, police raids on gay bars at the time were routine in the 1960s, but it got real at the Stonewall Inn that night. The police were there, as they normally did at that time, and they were attempting to arrest gay men dressed as women. Lesbians were frisked inappropriately and touched in a way that they shouldn't have been touched. Patrons of the bar were actually being beaten in the club, and then a lesbian was arrested and brought outside of the club, and she was beaten in front of the growing mob outside of the club, which eventually escalated into chaos. From that moment, tensions grew between the New York City police and the gay community. And within weeks, Greenwich Village residents had quickly organised into activist groups to establish safe places for the gay community to hang out, where they could be themselves, they could be open about their sexuality without fear of being arrested. After the Stonewall riots, 1 year on, the first gay pride marches took place across America. So this is where we actually get our modern LGBT pride events from. Now, it wasn't until 50 years later that the New York City Police Commissioner rendered an apology on behalf of the police department for the actions of its officers at Stonewall in 1969. I mean, imagine that. The sheer joy and vindication that those people must have felt after all those police brutality that they had endured. Marsha was actually born Malcolm Michaels Jr. Then he was a he, and he grew up with 6 siblings. Johnson was extremely religious growing up, which makes her story fascinating. She experienced racism, prejudice, homophobia, and still managed to champion a change in our perception of the LGBT community. Johnson actually first began wearing dresses at the age of 5, but she stopped temporarily due to harassment by boys who lived in the area near her house. In a 1992 interview, Johnson actually described being the young victim of a sexual assault by an adolescent boy. After this, Johnson described the idea of being gay as some sort of dream, rather than something that seemed possible, and so chose to remain asexual until leaving for New York City at 17. So if we think about that, it must have been a very difficult time for him, because not only had he been assaulted and had to deal with the trauma from that, but he was also having to live a double life and not be himself. His mum actually had some ignorant views, and Johnson's mother reportedly said being gay was actually being lower than a dog. Johnson defended his mother by saying that his mother just didn't understand the LGBT lifestyle and community at the time. After Johnson graduated in New Jersey in 1963, she left home for New York City with $15 in her pocket and a bag of clothes. I mean, what bravery to just up and leave like that, and to move to a new place and to start a new life in hopes of becoming who she wanted to be. She waitressed after moving to Greenwich Village in 1966, which is a part of New York City that is renowned for its association with writers, artists, musicians. We generally find that these kind of creatives are the freest and most liberated people in the world. It was here that Marsha actually finally felt empowered and inspired enough to come out and become the outspoken advocate for gay rights that she is treasured for. Not only was Marsha a black transgender activist, her efforts also included being a founding member of the Gay Liberation Front, mentoring and helping to provide housing for homeless LGBT youth, being an AIDS activist with the organisation ACT UP. She also founded organisations to serve trans communities. Marsha also co-founded the gay and transvestite advocacy organisation, STAR, the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Marsha even modelled for Andy Warhol and performed on stage with the drag performance troupe Hot Peaches. Marsha's later life, unfortunately, was overshadowed by her poor mental health. We have to remember that Marsha, growing up, lived a very difficult life of oppression, of having to live a double life and not being who she wanted to be. And there must have been a lot of trauma and difficulty that came along with that affected her mental health. It was said that she had schizophrenia and a multiple personality disorder. When Marsha slipped back into being Malcolm, which was her birth name, she would have her male, deeper voice, and she was very volatile and aggressive. And it's just very difficult to imagine living such a painful life, and it's, no wonder that she ended up being sick. It's important to remember that if it wasn't for the bravery of Marsha and other people like her, our world would not be anywhere as liberated as it is now. So thank you very much for joining me for my Woman Crush Wednesday. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you want to see anyone else covered in this feature, please just let me know and drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for my next instalment. Peace out.